Well, hello, my fabulous friends. I hope you're doing well. Well, I just did a reading. I got to clean that energy out. Who gave the information to the media about the loan that Andrew got? It was a loan, not a gift, to pay off Virginia Goofrey, and quite revealing. So now I want to know. I don't think we've asked this question. How much did the Queen actually know? And I think in some respects we've asked, but I mean, would you just hand your child that much money unless you really knew what it was for? I think that they are threatening to release more of what the Queen knew to, it's a bargaining chip, actually. Let's go do a deep dive into how much did the Queen know. A deep dive, please, cards. How much did the Queen know about Sarah? How much did the Queen know about Andrew? At what age did she know this about Andrew? You just don't wake up one day and go, I think I'm going to do 40 women in 48 hours. This is, signs were there. How much did the Queen and King know? And will it ever really come out how much they really knew? Nobody likes to speak ill of the dead, but I think the truth needs to be spoken, right? And I don't think that's speaking ill of the dead. How much did the Queen, and when did she know? And how much did Phillip know? And will we ever actually know the whole truth about what did she know? There's a lot of questions in there, but I wanted to put the idea into the cards. The Star, hope and healing. Oh, the clock is saying the Star. I'm thinking that the Queen knew a lot, but she was hoping that it would get better. Maybe she was hoping, he did have the nickname Randy Andy. So perhaps she always thought it would sooner or later get better. Temperance. Let's put, the Sun. Look at the major arcanas. But they're peaceful. They aren't angry. We don't have the Tower here. We don't have the Devil. We've got, I'm going to say that there was a balance that she knew. And also you could think this is S-O-N, right? About her son. And we did ask the cards, how long did she know? And I'm going to say that she knew from a young boy that Andrew had difficulties, behavioral problems. I'm going to say that. The Lovers, choices. I'm going to say the Queen blamed Sarah. And now we know why Phillip banned Sarah. And then, of course, they always had a strategy around Andrew. Now, look, we have 4 major arcanas here. I think that the Queen may have known more than she was letting on. She knew her son was a handful. Sorry, almost out of control. This horse is galloping and not hanging on. Well, you're kind of out of control, aren't you? Something tells me she always knew that Andrew would be some kind of star. Like the star of all of the children. And you think about it, he was the most handsome, and he was, the best catch, and he was a helicopter pilot and fought in the Falklands War, and always pushed forward as, really everybody says, oh, Andrew is the Queen's favorite, but maybe it was because he was pushed forward as the smile, and and how the women loved him, and jolly good, and that even comes out here in the Sun, that he was pushed forward out of all 4 of the children. Obviously Charles couldn't really do a lot about that. He was the second in line. He had to keep his nose clean, so to speak. Well, Anne, that just wasn't in her nature. I mean, yes, Anne did do some, publicity and whatnot, but it was Randy Andy was going to be the star of the children, and Edward, of course, was the quiet one. So, for publicity, let's put this good-looking young man out there. He's dashing in Navy. Look at all the girls love him, and he's sporty, like a sportsman, and yeah, that's I think what happened with Andrew. Perhaps they thought if they kept him busy, we have to remember they put Harry into the army. That was his option. Like, asylum or army, pick one. Because Harry was just as ill behaved as Andy was. I think that the Queen thought a lot of the stuff that was happening with Epstein was blamed on Sarah. On the two of them for sure, but not the darling son. He was just dragged along. And she definitely had some kind of strategy to keep it quiet. Sorry, she did. And that could be on advice of the palace as well, the crown, the firm. Ace of Wands, yes, she knew. She absolutely knew. Absolutely knew. But she was very passionate about keeping it peaceful and balanced. And Knight of Cups, there's actually Randy Andy. There's Andrew as the dashing prince, because he's a Pisces, right? So there he is. Knight in shining armor. A lot of the girls are like, oh, Andrew. I mean, he's my age group, so I remember, especially growing up in Canada, where the royal family is, daily in school, you grew up singing God Save the Queen. So you knew a lot more about the royal family. And there he is. He grew from the favorite son being pushed out to the dashing knight in shining armor. Page of Wands. I'm almost wondering if she thought in some respect that Sarah would kind of calm him down. But she knew. She knew. Eight of Wands, more communication. The Hermit. The Hermit. There's Harry. And Harry, Andrew's is one of his godfathers. And also they have the spare. They both are spares. I think the Queen was more worried about Harry than what Andrew as an adult was doing with his divorced wife. I think with this Page of Wands, she may have heard of a lot of things, but really kind of was dismissive. Heard a lot of this news. I mean, the Wands' passion is actually sex, as the wand right here shows you. So I think she may have heard many, many stories about it. And she was more worried about what would happen to Harry. Right? Because she wanted to take Harry under her wing. Harry would have been a teen by now. Let's see, what's the final one here? More wands. More wands. There was definitely some kind of strategy going on. And we're asking, like, how much did they know? And I'm going to say that, they really didn't know a lot, because knowledge is swords, right? And we have some 7, which is strategies and trying to, cover up things. And then we have the 5 of Swords, which is, almost, I don't want to say bully, because it's upright. In reverse, it's a bully, but wanting to win at all costs. And so is this, the cover up and everything. And it was more about the reputation. It was more about, how does this look to the world, than actually digging in and finding out what was going on. And more worried about, how much of this is affecting Harry as the spare. I don't think it bothered her too much about what the girls were going on. Here would be the girls, they are both fire signs. I think in some respects, maybe the father said, no, the girls are fine, right? You look at this row is like positive. But yet, here's the wand. Here's Harry with the wand. How much of this did Harry know? And how much is Harry picking up on it? And how much does Harry know? Isn't that interesting? Of all her grandchildren, Harry is the one that was most on her mind. Maybe she knew Harry was like most vulnerable. I'm going to say that she was more worried about making sure that this was communicated properly, and possibly like working with her worldwide sources to make sure that everything was kept under the rug. It's right there. It's right there. Page of Cups. Now, see, now we're getting into more thoughts of swords. So, yes, it was surprising news, but then the Queen could also say the less that she knew, ignorance is bliss. The less she knew, the better it was for the Queen. Then she'd say, I had no idea. Nobody told me. I had no idea. None whatsoever. There she is. So here's this surprising news. What? Surely you jest. Here's the Seven of Cups and the Eight of Pentacles, King of Cups. Interesting, Phillip didn't show up here as the King of Swords. Here's the King of Cups. This is Charles. I think that the Queen was more worried about continuing on the monarchy, keep calm and carry on, never complain, never explain. Here's all her choices she had, and it was like, never complain, never explain, keep on working hard, doing what you're doing, and possibly offloading it to Charles. But I don't think that she believed that it was as bad as what's coming out. I think that she knew Andrew was a difficult child. I think she knew he was a sweet talker with the girls. I think that she knew he deserved the title Randy Andy. She may have just thought, like, I don't see any illegal cards on here. I don't see anything illegal. I'm not saying Andrew didn't do anything illegal. I'm saying that the Queen did not realize that Andrew was doing anything illegal. The Queen was more worried about the reputation, about the strategy to keep it locked down. I think the Queen contacted some of her, I'm not even say colleagues, that's the wrong word, contacts. Thank you, brain. And said, do not publish those stories, or don't publish this, or don't publish that. I think the Queen, once the first information came out about him being arrested and then he was in prison and whatnot, I honestly think that she may have thought Andrew had learned his lesson, or Sarah did, or whatever, and then she was more worried about Harry getting tangled up in those people. Honestly, I think that was her bigger issue, is Harry as a young boy getting tangled up in all of that. As for how much she knew, I will say it again, she did not know. I know there's a lot of people pointing fingers at her, whatnot. I'm going to say that she was on a need-to-know basis, and then that way, if something did explode, she could say, I had no idea. I had no idea. I'm just as confused as you are. I'm just disillusioned as you are. I had no idea. I had no idea. I would never dream that it was this bad. Keep calm and carry on. Keep the monarchy running smoothly. That was her job, and she did it immaculately. And even when all that was going through with the Virginia Goofrey and that, she didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. All she was doing was working to get Charles on the throne. And perhaps, in some respects, perhaps she was like, let Charles deal with it, and maybe she was worried about Charles and Harry. But something, Harry's the one that showed up here. Maybe she knew how vulnerable Harry was and how out of control Harry was. And maybe she was just like, that's even worse than Andrew. Right? We have to remember, Andrew doesn't drink or do drugs. So you add that behavior wrapped into alcohol and drugs. No wonder they threw him in the army, threw him over to Afghanistan, probably to dry him out. All right, so this is the last time I'm going to read on this because the cards are very clear. There's nothing, she did not know the extent of it. And she blamed Sarah for more of it than Darling's son. And she was more concerned about Harry getting involved in all of it. And I think keep calm and carry on, never complain, never explain was her motto. And then that way, if it did blow up, she didn't know. She simply did not know. And you know what? As a mother, I don't want to know everything my children are doing either, to be honest. Please take good care. See you online. Bye for now.